So welcome to the third in a series of water availability listening sessions, co-hosted by the U.S. Geological Survey and NOAA's National Integrated Drought Information System. These listening sessions seek input on priorities and needs related to predicting water availability changes under drought conditions at national and regional scales. This input will be used to guide USGS Drought Program planning and orientation. We will additionally be making the findings available to support complementary activities in drought and water availability by other agencies. We thank you so much for taking this opportunity to provide input on what you need to us to prioritize the development of science for your drought applications. And we appreciate in advance bearing with us through any potential hiccups that may occur, as you've noticed. We'll be using new to us features of Teams to organize breakout groups to provide interaction and presentation in a hopefully effective and fun way. So I'm Jamie Painter, and I am the Water Use Program Manager at the USGS. For this introductory session, I will be acting as your co-moderator.
And I am Marina Skumanich. I'm Program Specialist at NIDIS and Coordinator of the National Coordinated Soil Moisture Monitoring Network. So a special thanks to everyone for joining this session today. We'll start off with a quick introduction to the USGS and NIDIS, and then we'll share 3 presentations to provide context for our subsequent discussions. These will be on water use prediction, challenges of understanding hydrologic drought, and an example application of how information on water availability is used in drought management. Throughout this part of the program, we will also be providing, if we can get it to work, some additional opportunities for interactive engagement via Menti polling to get to know you and your water use needs. After the presentations, we'll be splitting up into small breakout groups to seek your input on national and regional scale priorities for your drought applications.
And after the breakup sessions, we will reconvene and have a preliminary discussion of the input and feedback received. Our primary goal today is listening and documenting your needs and priorities, and we thank you for your participation. So, starting with who we are and why we are here, we have a few summary statements on this slide for both the USGS and NIDIS. The USGS's mission involves monitoring, analyzing, and predicting complex human and natural Earth system interactions, and to deliver actionable intelligence at scales and timelines relevant to decision makers. Thus, the reason we're here to talk about drought prediction. NIDIS's mission is to work in collaboration with partners at all levels and help the nation prepare for, mitigate, and respond to the effects of drought. We are partnering on this series of listening sessions to support a comprehensive interagency approach for drought research and prediction so that the tools may be delivered to help states, tribes, and local communities plan for and mitigate the impacts of drought. Today, your moderators, facilitators, and note takers all represent USGS or NIDIS, and we look forward to the discussions and getting to know you and your perspective.
To give a sense of the diversity of our attendees today, we had people registering from across the US with a large contingent, as you can see, from the Western US, but we also have good representation from the Plain States and from the Southeast and Northeast. And notably, we also had individuals register from a number of tribal nations. Internationally, we also had registrants from various locations, including Canada, Brazil, Greece, Gabon, Saudi Arabia, and Indonesia. It is clear there's a broad interest in this topic. And now for a real-time snapshot of attendees, when you entered the meeting today, we had the opportunity to let us know about the polling. I'm not sure if that is up. Do we have results at all for that? I'm laughing a little. I think we do not have results.
I think, Marina, there are a few results. I think we're just missing the slide up on the screen. But again, I think we're Intermountain West region. We have a lot of, and I'll let you take this from here.
Yeah, right. Great. No, that's it exactly. Got Intermountain West, Northeast. You can see across the US, a region not on the list. So that might be broad. yeah, so a mix of places, but again, Intermountain West, the predominant number of people. At least those are voting so far. We're at about 40 answering. And exciting that this poll is up, not this one in particular, but going forward, there will be some we'll be really interested in your input on. So this was our little dry run practice one. So again, nice mix of people from around the country. But we've got at least one attendee so far from the Midwest, hoping we'll get Great Lakes and Alaska, Hawaii in a bit, and as well as territories, etc. Okay, well, I think we can move on to the next poll.
So as a group, we'd like to get your input on our collective familiarity with water use information and prediction products. If you haven't already, open that Mentimeter, do it again, by either going to that menti.com and using the code listed, or you can capture the QR code with the camera on your phone. Let us know which category best describes your interaction with water use information and prediction products. You should have the option to choose multiple categories if they apply. And we also include an option for items not on the list. And if that applies to you, please enter a response in the chat to let us know more. So now let's take a look at those results after you guys get a chance to enter them. So yeah, it looks like people are definitely using some water use products in their prediction products. And probably more so than anything. Also, generating information used to create water use prediction products is also a big user here. Some folks are developing hydrologic models or water use prediction products. So it looks like there's a couple extra things on the list, and we'll get to see those results in a little while, but I think generally it looks like people are definitely using water use information in their predictions, and so that's good to hear and to look and to see. Yeah, so I think they're kind of tailoring down to not moving quite so much, so I think we'll move on here. So thank you for your input, and now let's move on to the summary of today's agenda.
Okay, just a quick overview of our agenda today. We will move out of the introductions now and into our set of 3 featured presentations on water use and hydrologic drought. And between presentations, we'll continue to do some additional polling. After the presentations, we will briefly introduce the upcoming breakout sessions and then take a short break before moving into those breakout sessions, which will take about an hour and is really the focus of our time today. After the breakouts, we'll again have a short break and then return to the plenary one final time for a report out and then wrap up and sharing some next steps. Okay, we're ready for our first presentation by Diana Restrepo Osorio, a geographer with the USGS Kansas Water Science Center. Diana will be speaking on assessing drought in the social sciences. Diana's interdisciplinary research interests focus on perceptions and attitudes about the use of data and socioeconomic factors in stakeholder decision-making. Her disciplinary training includes human geography, political ecology, and Latin American studies. Her research includes the understanding of socioeconomic factors that may affect water availability at the national level. Diana works locally with the Kansas Water Science Center, reporting on statewide water use trends, and she is also interested in the human dimensions of science and serves in various working groups for diversity and inclusion.
Hello, my name is Diana Restrepo Osorio, and I'm a geographer at the Kansas Water Science Center. And today we'll be talking about assessing drought in the social sciences. The definition of drought classifies this phenomenon as 4 types: meteorological or climatological drought, agricultural or soil moisture drought, hydrological drought, and socioeconomic drought. We explored the structures that make communities in the Upper Colorado River Basin vulnerable to water insecurity. In our research, outside of environmental or macroeconomic drivers, we found 3 structures or determinants of water availability in the agricultural sector of the Upper Colorado River Basin. We will be focusing on the agricultural sector for this talk, but feel free to contact us if you have questions regarding other sectors. In this table, we will connect the determinants identified in our study to the adaptation strategies or coping mechanisms to water price increases and how these strategies affect the drought sequence that we introduced previously. All of these dynamics within the framework of the structures, laws, and rules that you see in the left column. Starting with the economic determinants, we see that the average price of water is determined by structures like the irrigation district planning and/or federal irrigation projects. In turn, the average price of water determines the agricultural demand for water. The other economic determinant, land allocation by crop type and irrigation technology at the producer level, is managed by irrigation districts, which distribute annual irrigation supply for most producers in Western United States. They also place restrictions on transfers in and out of the irrigation district and enforce the use it or lose it principle of prior appropriation, which penalizes producers for engaging in water conservation practices like deficit irrigation. In this example, the water prices increase due to decreased availability. The coping mechanisms for these economic determinants may include short-term changes to increase the intensity of irrigation management by implementing deficit irrigation, which, remember, could be penalized by irrigation districts. At the longer term, there may be a shift to higher value crops, or producers may follow low production land. In terms of the institutional determinant of land use at an aggregate scale, local, regional, state, or federal institutions determine water demand for agricultural production. In the Upper Colorado River Basin, pressures associated with high water costs may lead to high-value agricultural land being converted into urban centers. This change requires less water, but may impact albedo effects, potentially increasing the temperatures at local levels. The use of conservation practices like deficit irrigation, which increases plant transpiration and therefore the loss of water, as well as land use and land cover changes like increase in urbanization, can impact the water cycle dynamics of a basin. Providing water to fulfill short and long-term agricultural goals and society's demands for surface and groundwater will become increasingly challenging. Going back to our social science lens and the social construction of disasters as applied to this case study, many of these outcomes have root on the legal structures that we have created as a society. It is important to mention that we also have the power to change the structures to increase our adaptation and resiliency to drought. For example, states like Colorado have revised their statutes to provide partial relief to the use it or lose it penalty, which reduces the transferable yield in future water right changes. They have allowed for consumptive use reductions not to affect historical consumptive use calculations if water use is under a conservation plan. With that, we close by saying that we hope that this talk highlighted the work that we have done to identify human factors of water availability, which point to the social determinants of water availability across sectors that will help us manage drought in effective and efficient ways. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Diana, for providing that overview of assessing drought in the social sciences. If you have any questions for Diana, please post them in the chat and she can respond to you through the chat box. And if by chance you do not have that chat bubble in your version of Microsoft Teams, hold your question and we should have some time toward the ends of our listening sessions to circle back and field some of those questions verbally. So to follow Diana's talk, we have another polling opportunity. Let's hope this one works. For you to provide some feedback on times when you have had to make decisions in the absence of water use information. So if you would like to take part in that polling, please return to that Mentimeter website and provide your input regarding how often a lack of information on water use and water use prediction during a drought has cost you or your customers or negatively impacted resource management decisions. Responses include frequent, occasional, rarely, never, and not applicable. And so as you guys are entering that information in, we'll be looking at those results. So it looks like majority at this point in time are, it's so not applicable for the most part. You don't feel like this is you're lacking information in order to provide that have cost your customers money or you guys valuable resources. And then also some rarely. So it looks like majority of folks haven't experienced some financial economic issues related to not having water use information in your predictions. And from there, I think we'll just keep on moving. You can continue to enter there, but thanks for adding your input, and we hope that was an interesting way to get to know the group, and we'll now move on to our next speaker.
Okay, next up is Kate Rottler, New Mexico Climate Adaption Specialist with the South Central Climate Adaption Science Center, who will be presenting on the Ogallala Data Directory Project. Kate received her PhD in ecology from the University of Wyoming, and prior to working for the USGS was a postdoctoral researcher for the USDA Southern Plains Climate Hub, also in Oklahoma. There, she researched the effects of managing for soil health on croplands in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, as well as engaged with farmers, ranchers, and other USDA end users about how to adapt to the effects of climate change in the region.
Hi there, I am super excited to be here today. I will be talking about the Ogallala Data Directory Project, which is a project I've headed up. And it is a metadata directory for natural resources and agriculture data sets in the Ogallala Aquifer region. So this here that you're looking at is the landing page for the Ogallala Data Directory. It is hosted alongside the Ogallala Water Coordinated Agricultural Project's dataset library. And that's simply so that we could leverage the strengths of what's already been built rather than building something entirely new. So through the Ogallala Data Directory, you'll have access not only to the metadata records for various data sets on all over the internet, you'll also have access to the metadata records for the Ogallala Water CAP, Coordinated Agricultural Project. From this homepage, you can get to the data sets a number of ways. You can either click on data sets or add data. I'm going to click on data sets. Once you're on the data set page, you'll see this little ticker thing here. You can either look at all data sets, so that's the whole Ogallala Data Directory, or if for some reason you only want to look at the Ogallala Water CAP projects data sets, you can do that as well. I'm going to leave it on Ogallala Data Directory. Currently, we only have 19 pages worth of data. However, we expect soon to be able to finally ingest the data sets from data.gov, and that will significantly increase the number of metadata records that we have. I'm kind of using metadata set and data sets interchangeably, I apologize. So once you're on this page, you can do any kind of search that you want. I like searching for New Mexico. You'll see that we have 22 entries for various data sets for New Mexico. You can search for other strings as well, but I'm not going to demonstrate that since we don't especially have time. You can also, one of the cool features is that you can look at a map of all the data directory data sets. So what this shows is the 70 something data sets that I've put in. It will also hopefully show the data sets from data.gov. It does not show the Ogallala Water CAP data sets because they don't really have location information. So if something doesn't have location information, it won't be in this map. Once you're on this map, you can actually simply click on any of these points, and what it will show you is the area of interest for that point, and then you can click on more details, and that'll take you to the metadata record for that data set. So on this metadata record, the first thing you'll see other than the title is that you can look at where the data set is published. If you go there, then that'll allow you to download the data set itself. You'll see a description of the data set as well as when the metadata record was created and who created it. You'll also, especially importantly, see this contact person. So that's the contact person for the data set. That's who you would email if, for example, you can't find the data set, this link is broken or something, or you have questions. You'll also see the spatial coverage, that is by state, it doesn't go any smaller than state. And you'll see the temporal coverage, both start and end. In some cases, the temporal coverage start is a best guess based on what I could find about the data set while I've been putting these in. And then the temporal coverage ends. Sometimes this will be blank. That's for data sets whose temporal coverage never ends. So for example, those constantly updating data sets, regardless of the time step upon which they update, if they are still being updated, they will not have a temporal coverage end. You'll also see the latitude and longitude of that centroid point. So that little point on the map was the centroid of the data within the data set. We have National Agricultural Library keywords that we use to categorize the data sets. In this case, I've used New Mexico and groundwater. And we also have tags. I have not used any in this case, but you'll see tags on some other metadata records. You can also, on the data portal, you can register for your own account. So that's a really quick registration, and then you'll receive a confirmation email. What that does is it allows you to then add your own data sets. So when you're in data sets, you can then click add data set, and you can fill out this form. It's really easy, really fast to fill out. And then you'll click add data set, and what that will do is then put the metadata record into the Ogallala data directory for everyone else to be able to access. And because we're limited on time, that's kind of the short and the quick and dirty version of the tour of the data directory. However, if you are interested in more details about the data directory, or especially if you want to add data sets yourself, that would be fantastic. But if you know of other people who should hear about the data directory, if you would like to tell them about it, or I can tell them about it if it's, you know, something you would like me to speak to them about. But we're just hoping that this data directory gets out there to the people who can use it, and we would love to see it kind of built on. So if you even think of a project, or if you have a project in the future whose data you think should be put in here, or that you think could build upon it, that would be fantastic. We're also working on incorporating some visualizations, especially maps. I'm trying my hardest to build a map that shows all of the active wells in the Ogallala Aquifer region, but because that's so many, it's kind of a challenge. So anyway, stay tuned for kind of the future of this data directory. We're going to keep adding to it, and I would love to take any questions either on the talk or on the data directory itself. Thank you.
Thanks so much to Kate for providing that review of the Ogallala Data Directory Project. If you have any questions for Kate, please continue to post those in the chat, or again, we can hold those to the end of the listening session. So now we're going to, at this point, we want to enter another Mentimeter. So we may all wonder what type of applications are of interest to attendees today. So we'll again go back to that Menti poll and see what application areas may be represented, ranging from water resources and agriculture to ecosystems and geophysical research. You probably know the drill at this point, so we'll take a couple of minutes for this opportunity. So as early results are starting to come in, it looks like the applications that you're most interested in using water use prediction products are in drought monitoring predictions, followed by water resource management, and then closely followed by climatological or geophysical research. There is some social and economic or planning considerations. That's exciting to see. And then, so yeah, drought monitoring keeps stepping up, which makes perfect sense for this setting and this group for sure. Yep, they're kind of hanging in there. I think we've kind of leveled out a little bit, but you'll see the results there on the screen. So thank you so much for providing that input. And now I think we'll move on to that last presentation for today.
Okay, for this last presentation, we'll be hearing from Collins Balcom, who's a supervisor of water resources planning and project development with the Bureau of Reclamation, Oklahoma, Texas area office, who will speak about drought prediction, a partnership with the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, Lugert Altus Irrigation District, and Mountain Park Master Conservancy District. Collins oversees grant assistance programs and provides coordination and technical assistance related to water resource planning, drought management, and tribal affairs in the states of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas.
Everybody, it's a pleasure to speak with you today. The Bureau of Reclamation is a federal water resource agency that operates and maintains hundreds of dams and reservoirs across the western United States. Today, the focus is on 2 reservoirs in western Oklahoma. These reservoirs are operated by the local water districts under contract with the Bureau of Reclamation. Lugert Altus Reservoir provides irrigation water to about 50,000 acres of farmland. Tom Steed Reservoir provides regional drinking water supplies to about 40,000 people. Between 2010 and 2015, the area experienced a new drought on record, and both reservoirs reached the lowest levels in history, and the impacts were devastating. Groundwater and surface water are regulated separately in the state of Oklahoma, regardless of hydrologic connection. And surface water is regulated under a prior appropriation doctrine, essentially meaning first in time, first in right. Rights to the water stored in Reclamation's reservoirs are held by the districts and are senior to most, if not all, the junior stream permits in the basin. During the drought of record, questions were raised about the impacts of those upstream permits, as well as from groundwater pumping upstream of the reservoirs. However, the data and tools necessary to quantify the impacts and attribute the source of those impacts did not exist at the time. The Oklahoma Water Resources Board has planning and permitting authority over water in the state of Oklahoma. In 2012, they published their state comprehensive water plan that recommended strategies to address these gaps. In a tremendous act of leadership, Reclamation, the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, and the 2 water districts developed a collaborative partnership to address the recommendations in the state plan. In doing so, we initiated the Upper Red River Basin Study, and 7 years and $3.5 million later, we're finally nearing completion of the study this year. Using new ground and surface water models, we evaluated the impacts of various ground and stream water permitting scenarios on water availability in the basin. We were able to quantify the gap between supplies and demands, and we were also able to determine the causes of those impacts. This allowed us to develop solutions that targeted these sources. For example, here's an illustration showing permit availability for Tom Steed Reservoir, with blue indicating that there's sufficient storage in the reservoir to meet demands, and red showing that there's a shortage. To protect the reservoirs, one solution was to set conditions that reduce junior permitted stream diversions that protect the reservoir during drought periods to avoid these shortages. A key question was, how can we predict when those shortages are going to occur? We compared dozens of drought indicators, and using a variety of statistical techniques, we selected a combination of regional and local drought indicators listed here. We also tested the performance of these indicators in terms of predicting drought and non-drought conditions. 15 different drought scenarios were evaluated. The gray shading here highlights the occurrence of a drought, for example, based on each definition on a monthly time step over 90 years of observed records. We also tested a range of thresholds for each drought indicator. In the end, we selected the 4 inflow and PDSI thresholds shown here, alongside reservoir storage. The question now was, if stream permits were curtailed when these thresholds are met, how often would they be curtailed and how well do they protect reservoir yield? Here's a graphic showing inflow over the period of record. The horizontal colored lines show when the 4 inflow thresholds have been met. Here's the same graphic for PDSI. The middle graphic here shows the timing and duration of permit curtailments over the period of record among the 4 thresholds. Although not shown here, results indicate that the thresholds can protect reservoir yield. Results also show that you can have the same protection of reservoir yield while curtailing upstream permits less often. In other words, all else being equal, the green threshold here would be preferred over the orange threshold. In other words, protect the reservoir, but not overly cut off diversions upstream. These are significant findings that could help achieve win-win outcomes in these river basins during the next drought. Switching gears, the graphic here shows groundwater wells in green within the alluvium in red upstream of Lugard-Altus Reservoir. We apply the same methodology used for stream water to identify thresholds that could be used to manage groundwater pumping. Although there are significant legal hurdles to overcome to do this, the results serve great value for future work in this area. The final results are being processed now. That concludes my presentation. I encourage folks to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Collins, for the review of your drought prediction partnership in Western Oklahoma. As before, if you have any questions for Collins, please put those in the chat or hold those for a little bit later. And now we're going to move to one more Mentimeter. And this one is going to be focused on timescale of water use information. So Collins' presentation gave us a great understanding of water use and drought management in Oklahoma. During the breakout sessions in just a few minutes, we'll hear from you about your individual applications. But before then, we get into those sessions, we have this last question for you related to the timescales most of interest to you related to water use information and prediction. So, all right, take a look. Let's get into that Mentimeter, and we'll look at those results here in just a second. So as the results are rolling in, it looks like the timescale for water use prediction information that's most useful, it's jumping around a little bit, but it looks like consistently monthly water use prediction information seems the most useful to you all. And annually comes in second. Oh, and then we're just jumping up some historical data. Looks like it jumps in there right before annual. So that's good. So yeah, so it's jumping around a little bit, but it looks like it's somewhat staying static a little bit here. So monthly still being dominant, and then historic data and annual data kind of jumping around there. Real-time data information doesn't seem quite as useful here. But the other time series, again, another change here, daily and weekly jump above retrospective or historical data and annual. But it looks like we kind of stabilized here, I guess. So I think we'll just move on, and thank you guys for your input there. So we'll take it back to Marina to introduce our breakout sessions.
Okay, so just a quick review of the rest of our agenda between now and 3:30 p.m. ET. First, we are going to take a few minutes to walk you through those breakout sessions, and then we'll take a short 5-minute break. And during that period, you will be automatically moved into one of the small breakout rooms, which will last for about 1 hour. Following the breakout sessions, there will be a 15-minute break, and then we will reconvene again as a large group to share a final report out on key topics. And we'll end with a few brief comments about next steps. So the objective of today's breakout sessions is to get your feedback in a smaller group setting on your priorities and needs for monitoring and predicting changes to water use related to drought conditions. And related to that, what kinds of product development or product improvements would help you the most in the work that you do. As Jamie mentioned, our primary goal for this listening session is to hear from you directly on your needs and priorities, and we thank you in advance for your participation and candid comments. And we continue to ask for your patience as we manage the logistics of moving everyone into the breakout groups and back to the broader session. So during the breakout sessions, your facilitator will walk you through 4 questions. The first question focuses on understanding your applications for water use information to anticipate changes related to drought conditions. Next, we will spend time discussing the challenges, special considerations, and common uncertainties you face for predicting water use changes related to drought.
And next, we're interested in learning what types of hydrologic drought information products or indices you currently use and what you like or dislike about those products. And this will lead us to our final discussion of what improvements to water use information and prediction would help you the most for your application.
And then finally, to wrap up, your facilitator will ask you to identify the priorities and responses from other attendees that really resonated with you. And from there, you will work as a group to identify one overall key takeaway to share when we reconvene with the plenary report out session. So as mentioned, after a short break, we will be starting the breakout sessions at 1:50 p.m. ET, and we are going to be assigning you automatically and randomly to those breakout groups. We found that helps provide an opportunity for cross-sectoral sharing and enhanced brainstorming. But we would appreciate your feedback on this as well as other aspects of our listening session afterwards. In the session, you'll be joined by a NIDIS or USGS facilitator and note taker.
And when you join the breakout session, you should have access to all of the Microsoft Teams meeting virtual features, including viewing participants, using the chat, using reactions, full access to your video, ability to unmute and leave the meeting. Hopefully you won't do that. As a quick introduction to this functionality, you can click on the icon of two people shown in the upper left of this slide to view participants. You can click on that chat bubble at the top of your screen to participate in the breakout session chat, or in some versions of Teams, the chat bubble will be in the control panel along the bottom. All of the chat comments will be captured, so please don't hesitate to use that functionality.
Having said that, we found that in some cases, and we've already experienced this a little, attendees do not have a chat bubble appearing. This seems to be an occasional issue with Microsoft Teams. In this case, we'd invite you to instead provide your comments verbally, and to do that, use the raise hand function to alert the facilitator that you'd like to speak. And of course, remember to unmute yourself before you start speaking. We'd also like to encourage you to use your camera if you can during the breakout session, since it'll be a small group. And finally, if you need to leave the breakout again at any time, you can use the return button to be returned to the main room. And if you're having any questions regarding the Microsoft Teams functionality, please don't hesitate to ask your facilitator, or if you can't even get into the room, please return to that main room and ask our organizer there. Okay, and with that, we will now take a short break, and during that time, you should automatically be moved to a breakout room. If you find there is any problem accessing the breakout sessions, again, rejoin this main room using the link in your calendar invite if necessary, and let us know you need some assistance. And one of the hopes will work with you to fix the problem. So we'll see you again back here in the plenary in about an hour for the discussion of key points that you've all had emerge from your breakout sessions. Thank you. See you soon.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back from our breakout sessions. First of all, a big thanks to all of you for sticking through all of this and providing your feedback to all of us to understand what your water use and information needs are. My name is Joel Lisenby. I am a drought information coordinator for the Intermountain West and Southern Plains regions at NIDIS. So I work closely with Marina, who is helping to run the earlier sessions. And what we're going to do now for the next few minutes is to go through just a quick prioritization exercise with some of the input that we heard from each group. Now, before I go into this, I would just like to make absolutely clear that even though within your group you worked out the #1 biggest impact change to water use information, that doesn't mean that we've lost everything else. All of the notes and all of the chat has been captured, and all of that will feed into this broader project of drought and water forecasts that we're working on with USGS. This exercise of prioritizing what we heard from the breakout groups is really just a way to sort of put everything into context of what did other groups say. And some of them are going to be very similar to each other, but it will sort of help support the ideas. Oh, I probably should have shown this slide when I was talking, all of that. I forgot to move ahead, but this is what we're going to be doing. So this is what we heard from each of the groups. There were, excuse me, there were 9 groups, and each group got together during the break, or each of the facilitators got together during the break and shared the highest priority change that was suggested in the group. And we had to summarize some of them because they were a little bit long. So if you don't recognize exactly what your group came up with, it's there somewhere, but we just sort of shortened it. The longer version has been captured, so it still is there somewhere. So I'm going to read through these quickly. I don't know a less boring way to go through that than for me to just read them. And then I've got a Mentimeter poll with the code here and the QR scan, and we're going to have a little prioritization survey. So group 1 said consistent water use data reporting. Group 2 said balance between water supply and water demand forecasts, better education and collaboration to ensure the data are fit for purpose, need more accessible data and better planning, readily available trusted tools to help inform water policy decisions, information regarding results of conservation efforts, reduce uncertainty in water use and supply, excuse me, especially in rural areas, coordination among water managers across basins and data products, and harness existing info, make more systematic, accessible, actionable for wide audience. So you'll see that some of these are fairly similar. Don't worry too much about that. We'll sort all of that out later. So the next thing I'm going to do is open up the Mentimeter poll, which is here. That should, and you should be able to go and rank these within Mentimeter of which one you think would be the most impactful to you in your job. That's sort of the filter that I'd like you to look at this with. And I'll give you just a few minutes. You'll be able to see the results change in real time as you cast your vote, but it takes a bit of time to put the ranking. Even after you have ranked using the drop-down menu, you have the ability within Mentimeter to drag and drop your preference to where you think it would be before clicking submit. Anyway, I'll be quiet for just a minute or two to let you vote. So far, harnessing existing info to make more systematic was winning. Oh, consistent water use data just came into the lead. With harnessing existing info is bouncing between second and third place. Looks like it may have slowed down. We've had 20 people participate in the polling so far, with consistent water use data reporting up at the top. That's an interesting one. We had a bit of a discussion in my group about what consistency looks like, and it comes from consistent data formats, consistent monitoring locations, consistent units used on the data. All of these can make it difficult to pull disparate data sources into a product or tool or a model that you're building. I don't see it moving anymore. It's kind of fun watching it move around. It's kind of like watching a horse race, who's going to be in the lead. But keeping in mind that even that one that's ranked number 9 is still being captured as important, because this rose to the top of an individual's individual breakout group. So it looks like things have settled down. So these are the improvements to water use information that would be most helpful. Thanks everybody for participating in the polling. Trying to remember what the process is here. Do I pass back to you, Marina?
You do.
Finish
You
things
do.
up? Okay.
Yeah, but while this is up, let me just make a comment for people that have not joined us for the other listening sessions. We've now had 3. This is our 3rd. And it's interesting. Each session seems to have some themes that are really key to that session that don't necessarily, I mean, there's overlap, but what I'm seeing today that's really striking me is that there's a real emphasis on communication and getting the right tools to get things available to the public. Some of the other sessions focused a little bit more on data. More data, in fact, was a big message, I think, from streamflow. So interesting in the different areas we're exploring, some really different places for us to be focusing. That's really helpful.
Great. Thanks for that comment. And I think I would add, if anybody who's online would also like to make a comment about how this prioritization exercise landed, if you adamantly disagree with it, or if you see a few key insights from your perspective that might be nice to point out to some of us that are missing some of that, go ahead and put those in the chat box, I guess. I don't know if you have the ability to mute or unmute, sorry, to unmute yourselves.
They can raise hands at the very least, and then we could mute them. Yeah.
So,
and just want to comment, obviously, this poll is reflecting 25 out of the entire group. And so, of course, it's not exactly the full reflection, but we do have all those notes from your breakout sessions, and any other opportunities you want to share your thoughts by email or whatever, we can add them in, but we will capture all of that information to have a rounded picture.
We had one hand up from Kate. So Kate, go ahead and unmute and share your thought.
Yeah, one is I'm not able to find the chat section on my bar.
Yeah.
It says more actions and chat is not an option. So I'm not able to add my comment. I don't see the information about geographic distribution of water use. So I know it says consistent water use data reporting. That's not necessarily what my number 1 was, a geographic water use related to irrigation, but in a general sense, the water use demands by geographic area.
Okay, so that theme of getting geographical distribution, not just having the data presented, but geographic, using GIS or that kind of tool.
Right, right.
Definitely echoed in my group. Definitely came up.
Catherine, your hand's up too.
And I guess I just wanted to add on to what Kate said. I think I was in group 8, and similarly, I think we had folks from different places, Brazos River Authority, a national program, but also like a large county in California. And we talked quite a bit about the fact that kind of the geographic information, particularly in areas where water is moving from a long distance away and is actually being supplied to that area from a water use standpoint. So I'll just echo Kate's thoughts. I thought that was that geographic component was really interesting. I think it came up, and I think Kelsey, for those that cannot see the chat, posted in the chat that was another key takeaway from group 6, that data on geographic distribution of irrigated land and crop type. So just wanted to point that out for folks that can't see the chat if your settings aren't allowing that.
Great. Thanks, Catherine, and thanks, Kelsey, for putting that in the chat. Kate, your hand is still up. I don't know if it's up again and you have something else to say, or if you just didn't put it down from last time. Okay, so you just put it down. Okay, well, if they have any other thoughts, raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I'll pass back to Marina.
Which will also mean getting the slides back up. But I'll just go ahead and start into it. So thank you all very much for your input today. We actually have a little bit of extra time, and I know several of you had trouble with the chat. I'm one of them. Couldn't see the chat myself, or still can't. So if you did have any questions, I'm just going to pause for a moment and ask people to raise your hand again if you had any questions for any of our presenters or for the rest of us. And if you do have any questions and aren't quite wanting to raise it now, et cetera, please feel free to email one of us. I'm sure you'll have our contact information on the web, on the email confirming today's session. And we will be following up, by the way, with a link to a recording of the session and all the presentations separately. So you can also get that information through that way and connect with us. But anyway, if one more click, Joel, and we'll get our next steps. So again, thank you so much for your input. Really is very helpful. And I know one of the persons in my group felt like he wasn't really saying anything important. No, actually, your mundane problems are important to us. So we really, really do appreciate your time and thoughts. What we'll be doing now is first doing a detailed review of the feedback and input from today's session, both the substantive information that provided through the breakouts, as well as any comments you have and our own experiences with our production process. This is our third, and this was by far the hardest, most hiccups technically. And we know that Microsoft Teams is in a transition right now, so we're sort of assuming that's what this is caused by. Fingers crossed for our next one. And of course, those USGS crack guys will also be following up to do some brainstorming and problem solving on that. But if you want to share anything more about today's session, really appreciate hearing from you. We will also then be looking forward to our next two sessions. September 8th will be water availability prediction for ecosystems. So this will be a focus on a particular sector that we think really needs some attention at this point. I know some of you attending today will agree. And so we have a registration still open for that. And for those of you who can see the chat, we'll put that link in the chat. If you can't see the chat and you are interested, just go ahead and ping one of us through the contact information in the email. We can be sure to get you registered for that or send the link separately. In addition, October 20th, we're going to have our final National Listening Series wrap-up session. That will be one where anyone who's attended any of our sessions will be invited to participate, so you don't actually have to register for that. You'll be getting the invite automatically. And in that session, it's just an hour long, but what we're going to do is come back with all of you, those who are interested, to do an overview and synthesis of what we've heard over the series of sessions. And that will include both a specific presentation on key findings, big ahas from each session, from streamflow, groundwater, this one water use, and the next ecosystems, and then also a discussion of the cross-cutting themes and big takeaways we have for all the different sector and topical discussions. So stay tuned for that. That should be, again, just an hour-long session, but should be kind of interesting because that'll happen after we've spent time going through all the very detailed and well-taken notes from our note takers. So we'll have a lot to reflect there. Okay, and I think with that, we are ready for our thank yous. So thank you all very much for your attendance and for bearing with us as we went through our various hiccups. And I do want to say, even though we had some hiccups, I'm very, very appreciative of the USGS AV folks. This is not their full-time professional job. They are actually researchers, but they've just been marvelous getting on top of all the intricacies with teams, et cetera. And then I also, of course, want to thank our facilitators and note takers for all their work. So you guys have been great. Thanks you again for your participation. Anything else, Joel or Jamie, that you want to add?
Yeah, I can share on behalf of Jamie. Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Dahm. I actually have not introduced myself, but I've been working behind the scenes, and I was with you in Breakout Group 8. Just to add for Jamie, she actually had to run to the airport, so she's missing this very last session. I just wanted to say on behalf of the USGS, and we really appreciate our partnership with NIDIS on this activity, and we really appreciate all of you taking the time. Our mission is to provide science as a public service, and we want to do that in the best way that we can that meets your needs. And I'll just reiterate, I think Marina's thanks to the presenters, to Marina and Jamie who moderated, to all of our facilitators and note takers, but mostly to, I think, every single one of you who took the time to really talk to us about what you need so we can better inform what we can do to meet your needs in the future. So thanks, Marina. Appreciate that.
Yep. Thanks to you too. All right. Bye, everybody. We may see you in another couple months.